वो बंदा यूं करके या
सारे तो चलाते हैं, किसी के पास नहीं।
ये खड़े रह के कैसे गाएगा सरस्वती वंदना?
मैम उसके लिए
पोडियम से पीछे चला गया।
इनके क्या नाम है आपका?
हेलो ओ भैया
क्या नाम है
साहिल से बोलो कि
अक्षय, ये ना वहाँ पे खड़े रह के गाने से आ जाएगी आवाज मुझे लगता है। वहाँ में माइक स्टैंड कर देंगे या तो बैठ के नहीं आएगा ना, स्वर नहीं आता है, नहीं सम्मान भी नहीं आता। जब वंदना गाएगी
नहीं मैम, कहीं भी खड़े हो सारे माइक स्टैंड होते हैं, किसी भी माइक से कर। और वीडियो के लिए ये वाली तो वीडियो ऑन रहेगा, ये वाला उसमें जाएगी।
चलिए चाय चला रही है।
इसको कह रहे हैं ना, उससे चार्ज होगा, मतलब आईफोन का चार्जर है
इससे उससे जाएगा
नहीं होगा,
आईफोन वाला ही था
वो आईफोन का चार्जर ही है वो है
सर। वो आपके पास जो कितनी देर का बैकअप है सर?
आईफोन के मोबाइल में नहीं लगेगा।
नहीं, वो तो जैक वाला
ब्लूटूथ है,
ब्लूटूथ
है।
चार्ज पे लगा देंगे।
बैकअप है ना सर उसका 2-3 घंटे का? हेलो, बैकअप है ना सर उसका? ठीक है।
कोई भी अपना से गूगल में करके
दे दे बस। भाई गूंजेगी आवाज उसकी, पास रहेगा तो गूंजेगी। कोई सा माइक ऑन होगा तो
यहाँ बंद कर देना माइक,
बंद रहेगा
तो साइन है।
हेलो साहिल, वो बैग में से चार्जर निकाल के लाना सेकंड फ्लोर पे, आईफोन का जल्दी लाना।
Meditation says that reducing the problem of the mind. That when I look down my window and I see these people walking with hats, just as philosophically, I could not be 100% certain that beneath the hats there are actually heads. You can give a complicated proof of that. Similarly, looking at people's faces and their emotional expressions, one cannot be sure that there is actually an attentive mind listening. But so I'm thankful to those of you who are physically present here. So what is more self-reflexive than the questioning of the very concept of question in this lecture? That is what we want to do. In fact, the previous sentence began with the WH word. What is more self-reflexive? Except that what Sri Harsha will tell us does not mean question, it means negation. Sri Harsha says there is a use of the word what? Right? For example, if you said that somebody said that this is not allowed by Haryana traffic rules. Somebody says, what traffic rules? They're not asking a question. They're denying the existence of any traffic rules. So it is Nishedhartham Kim. So I'll list them later on. So in this lecture, we will ask the question, what is the meaning of what? In Sanskrit, Kim Padasya Artha. If you want to make it this is not a game. Right? The promise very good.
and they are able to.
Okay. He's not used. But Victoria is here. That's what amazing. Victoria, listen. Amazing. Victoria, so glad to see you. From Moscow. So, what is the meaning of art? It's not about first name, Hiranyagarbha, the golden egg, gives to himself. Now there is an excellent book on Vedic origin stories. It's like a novel. I'm forgetting the name of the author. She has written that much. And the book is called Cup. Okay. Does anybody know? Comes from and it's not just the masculine gender form. Even the neuter gender form of the K words, WH words in Sanskrit, occurs in the Vishnu Sahasranam. It says, Savaka Kim Yat. So Kim is also a name of God. Why so? Why such an ordinary, such a humdrum, such a quotidian word like Kim? What? Why is that a name of God? Instead of keeping you in suspense, I'll tell you the bottom line. It's the name of God because it is the most open word. It is like the sky, unending. Because so the question is always pregnant with a set of alternatives. Right? But let's go back to the basics. In the philosophical investigations, paragraph number. Why do we need to see them?
That one will take out.
Wittgenstein seems almost to be warning us against such a loopy self-reflexivity when he writes Philosophical Investigations 24. If you do not keep the multiplicity of language games in view, you will perhaps be inclined to ask questions like, what is a question? So this is an unwelcome consequence, it sounds like. If we are stuck with a description or depiction theory, like his own theory, in the previous sentence he said, this is the kind of mistake, reducing all linguistic utterances into statements. This is the kind of mistake people make, and then he writes in the bracket, for example, the author of Tractatus Logico Philosophica. Doesn't mean it. If we are stuck with the description depiction, the depiction theory is a sort of generic translation of picture theory, of meaning for all varieties of sentences, we would search in vain for what is this that the sentence shut the door picture. It doesn't picture anything. It asks. It's an asking, it's a command. That's why the Mimamsakas would take command sentences, imperatives, to be the center of language. They reject all this, this AF, the subject and predicate form. Okay. And those, including my teacher Strawson, who think subject predicate form is the major core of language, they have great difficulty with commands, imperatives. Pass me the salt. Please pass me the salt. Now, what is it picturing? Is it true or false? Those questions don't make sense. And why are we asking these questions? Because we are reducing all sentences to descriptions. Just as shut the door. Now the door is shut. That's the thing. But pass me the salt is not a statement. Similarly, is the door shut is not a statement. You can't ask. You can't say that question is false. Right? That's like saying, that isosceles triangle is dishonest. That question cannot be false. Questions cannot be true or false. They might have presuppositions. If I ask Rakesh Chandra of Lucknow, if I ask Rakesh, I will stop meeting your wife. Rakesh might say it's a nonsensical question, although it's very clear enough meaning, but it presupposes lots of things. And most of those presuppositions are false. But even if the presuppositions are false, the question doesn't become false. It becomes inappropriate. If we are stuck with the reductive plan that every sentence ultimately somehow has to be forced into the structure of an assertoric sentence or statement, what does a question then describe or assert? We may wonder, is the statement, and this is quote again from Wittgenstein, he doesn't stop by that question sentence. He goes on to say, is the statement that I do not know such and such? That is, if I say, what is the name of Iran's prime minister? Is that question synonymous with, I do not know the name of Iran's prime minister? Wittgenstein says no. Or is it the statement that I have a wish that the other person tells me the name of Iran's prime minister? That's an autobiographical description of my state of wish and my state of ignorance. But the question is not that. The question expresses, it shows that I do not know, unless, of course, I know fully. We teachers often ask questions, sometimes successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully, pretending to be ignorant, as if we had forgotten questions, the answers of which I know. there was a very unfortunate episode in American Philosophical Association meeting. One of my extremely famous Indian professors was giving a paper, and there were very few people, no one almost. There was his wife, and he was there. So I thought I should do a loyal service to my former teacher. So I went there as an audience. And then after it was over, there was only one more other person. So I thought it's very odd question answer time. So I asked a question, just to make him feel good. And his response was very weird. He said, Arindam, I know that you know the answer to that question. Why are you asking me? It was like a class. I said, well, I'm starting to kick off some discussions, sir. He said, I know the answer, I won't tell you. So I said, why? He said, it took me many years to research this answer. It went downhill from there. But it's like questions can cause all sorts of, because people think, they don't think that you're expressing ignorance. They think, if I ask, Gulabarish, that okay, you know so much of Mahishadacharita, but I am forgetting, can you please tell me what Sri Harsha says about meaning of Kim? He will rightly guess that I'm testing him. I am not actually asking a question, and I'm definitely not saying that I don't know. Please enlighten me. So, no paraphrase that you will give in terms of a statement will capture the question. Question has its unique status. It is not just another kind of statement. So, when WH questions, by WH questions, I mean questions like what, where from, when, where, who, for the sake of whom. The dative, the fourth case ending, Chaturthi. One of the most famous Hiranyagarbha Stotra are all with the K word. After every verse, Kasmai Devaya Havisha Vide, to which God shall we offer our oblation. And as Abhinavgupta says in his Tantraloka, which I will come to, the question is its own answer. Kasmai Devaya, to which God? The God who is called which? That's the answer. Ka means Brahma, Hiranyagarbha. So one answer to the question, to which God shall we offer our oblation, is to the which God. Again, another very good friend of mine, after hearing this, somewhat teasingly but seriously, broke my heart by saying that, Arindam, are you trying to imitate Zizek? I said, no, man, I don't do that. So, I am back to the most serious piece of philosophy that any language can have. More serious than Socrates' Republic. More serious than, I don't know whether Gilgamesh has a philosophy. But WH questions have a primal significance in philosophy in general and Indian philosophy in particular. And of course, Plato's dialogues report Socrates to be persistently asking, what is X? With X being substituted by justice, courage, virtue, knowledge, friendship, etc. Right? Beauty, DPS major, justice. There is an entire Upanishad called Prashna Upanishad. But the one, if I was screen sharing, I would start with is, all of you should recognize the most primal, the most ancient, and still very relevant cosmogonic hymn. Kimavarivaha. Kuha, the word which has come from modern Sanskrit. Kuha. Kasya Sharman. I think the word Kuha originally meant something where, how can this happen? This kind of puzzlement used to happen. And then with Swate Kan, it became the word Kuhaka, which still exists. Kuhaka means puzzlement. You take the ka out of it, you get Kuha. That's in Nasatyasva. Kimavariva, Kuha, Kasya Sharma. Under whose care? Kimasit Khan, Kimasit, was there deep water before anything was there? And then there's a meta question. First line, ask these questions. Second line, who knows the answer to these questions? Ko Daved, Kaiha Pravocha, Kuda Ajata, Kuda Yam Visishti. Look at it in one verse. How many questions? Kim, Kuha, Kasya, Kim, Ko, Ka, Kuta, Kuta again. What covered it? Where was it? In whose keeping? Was there then the cosmic water in depths unfathomed? Who really knows? Who will here proclaim it? Whence was it produced? Whence is this creation? In the first 5 minutes, I said some questions open up options. And here also in the last verse, it opens up options. Who knows? Maybe the one in the high heavens, Tadeka, he knows. But then it says, Yadiva Veda, Yadiva Na. Or maybe he does not. I was told by an expert on philosophy of Muhammad Iqbal just last night that Iqbal, in his great book, Reconstruction of the Religious Philosophy of Islam, the title may not be correct, Reconstruction of the Religious Structure of Islam or something, he says that the future is so open and the movement of time is branching out into the unknown future. It's not just unknown to us. He says it is unknown. Look at that. He's a Quranic scholar. If there is any problem with him, it's that he believes the Prophet to be the creator of the world. And even he is saying that if you really authentically notice the nature of time, did you know, Kranti, that he was a direct student of Mekta, Iqbal, Mekta, PhD in Heidelberg, undergraduate training in Mekta. Mekta didn't believe in the reality of time, and this guy believes more than Bergson in the reality of time. It proves that the past, present, future, that A series is real. So he writes in that book that even God is asking the question, what will happen? Because there is nothing to know. Not because there is emptiness, but because it is really open. It's really open. Unless it was really open, freedom and creativity would not be possible. A poet cannot feel. A poet is said to be the Prajapati in the Kavya Samsara. Right? Kavireva Prajapati. Kavireka Prajapati. But even that poet, with his Prajapatitva, cannot predict. Tomorrow the poetry I will write what I shall write. If he can predict it, then he is plagiarizing from his future self. He's not writing original. Original means, I don't know. I was telling Gunavarishti last night. People should read Ramayana and Mahabharata, not just as Kavya. others philosophy books. It's all over. From the very Adi Kavya, we regard Valmiki to be the first poet. He gets angry out of emotions. So I'm teaching a class on emotions in Ashoka now. An unexpected, again, with the complete unexpectedness of the teacher or of even the student who made that comment. Some students said, I had asked a question, why is it that happy people shed tears? Shedding tears, Ashrupat, is a mark of sadness. I gave a very lugubrious explanation that if you see nice things, then you are sad because you remember past life's friends. Tatchetasa smarati nonava bodha purva avastirani jananantara sautaka. But this student gave a much more straightforward explanation and asked, not certainly asked, to their teaching fellow, that is it possible that any feeling, all the 9 time hours, when they well up together, there is a kind of surplus that comes out in the form of tears. People definitely cried out of laughing. I have seen people laughing so much they start shedding. Now, why am I talking about that? Because there was an experience of wonder, emotional wonder, by Valmiki, because nobody before him, he didn't know what poem was. So he said some things which had regular 4 parts, each had 8 words, 8 letters, syllables. It was an anushtuk, it was a rhythmic poetry. And he said that it was a curse actually. It cursed the hunter because the hunter killed one of a love bird. A pair of love birds were circling and the hunter killed the one partner, the other partner was crying. Out of the grief, out of the outrage, out of what Mahabharata calls anukrosha. So Vihangastu Krushati. And Valmiki Anukrushati. He cries after. And out of that extra emotion, he first said something which is an angry sentence. Ma nishata pratishthanto. You hunter will never have any settled life because you killed nicely, romantically, playing lover bird, the pair of them. One of them you killed. There is a curse like this in the beginning of Mahabharata and the beginning of Ramayana. Why? Pandu was cursed that the moment you will make love to Kunti, your own wife, you will die. Why? Because he had killed a couple which were making love in a grassland covered by the tall grass. And Pandu said, so look at that. Like the Uttar Pradesh police. Why are you making love in public? And you did that. As a result, the gods cursed him. You can't do that. You couldn't do that. The entire story of Mahabharata is caused by that curse. That's why he had to do rent a husband. All the Pandavas were born not of Pandu. They're not Pandu's children. Arjuna is born of Indra, Yudhishthira is born of Dharmaraja, Bhima is born of Vayu, Karna is born of Surya. Pandu could not give birth. Why? Was he incomplete? No. He prohibited somebody from doing public lovemaking. So, this guy, Valmiki, curses. And he's second, so first, Manishada Pratishthantu Magama, Shashvatisthama. Yat Kraunchamidhanadekam Abadhi Kamamohi. That's the first. Next line, it says, Shokarte Nashya Shakune Kimidam Yalitam Mayakim. The word what? What did I say now? How did it become rhythmic? He is wondering at his own state. That's the beginning of poetry. And when somebody says, I wanted to write a poem, I measured the words, I am the greatest poet of the world, this is how I have done it, ask me, I'll teach you a creative writing course, I know how to write a poetry. That's not the beginning of poetry, that's the end of poetry. Beginning of poetry is, I don't know how I did this. And I don't know is expressed in that active, non-descriptive, non-assertoric way. Give me the moon. What is this? Prashnopanishad is the name of a full Upanishad, which has 6 questions. Very quick. Whence are these creatures born? First question. Second question. How many gods? And here, I'm telling you, research this. Here, gods simply means Indriyani. Indriyadhishtati devata. How many gods keep what has thus been created? How many manifest? So this, in Shaktivada Gadadhara discusses separately how many questions. After discussing Kim, Ka, Kena, is very nice because the question how many is the question added to the range is ordinal numbers, cardinal numbers. How many questions? Cardinal numbers. So Kati Deva. So it's not just what, but what within the range of enumerable objects. I won't have time to get into that later, I think. And then finally, 6th question, then Sukesha, the son of Bharadwaja, said to Pippalada, Sir, Hiranyagarbha, the prince of Koshala, once came to me and asked this question, O son of Bharadwaja, do you know the person with 16 parts? Shorashakala Purusham, Janati Nava Bhavan, Etsinava. And I said to the prince, I do not know. I couldn't answer the question. And then he says, surely who speaks what is not true withers away. So if you don't know the answer to the question, don't give that answer. Because then you will wither away because of lie. Why? Because the presupposition of answering a question is, you don't know, you're asking, I know, therefore I'm telling you. Okay. And if somebody plays a trick by saying, somebody asks you, you've got down in, what's it called, the Saket metro, and you ask somebody, where is ICP? And the person has no clue. But the person tells you, the presupposition is, I know. Given that people are very legalistic over here, they might say, did I say I know? I didn't say I know. I just said aage jaiye. No, but the presupposition is, since you're answering the question, if you don't say I don't know, then you're presupposing. You're telling the person, yes, you don't know, I know. And this happens in India all the time. That people who don't know what you're asking would give you direction. What is much worse, of course, is that people who know what you're asking would not give you directions. Notice how the last question, then he says, then he silently, where does this person dwell? Where is the abode of this Purusha, this Chaitanya, this Atma? This is the 6th question, which is called Prashnopanishad. Notice how the last question comes with an anecdote about who is fit to answer a question and who should not answer a question, but pass the question over inside him or go away. This is, of course, a big debate about the last sentence of the Tractatus. One should speak of that which one can speak clearly about. What cannot be spoken clearly about should be passed over in silence. An advice that Buddha said he was going to take. But if we have to trust the three Pitakas, the three baskets, then he didn't quite keep quiet. But then about some questions, he would say, well, is there life after death? He was asked. Many such questions. Of Yak. He would say, well, this is not a useful question. But you can see his inclination. So we have talked about the Nasatiya Sukha. The main part of my talk was going to be Abhinavgupta's Tantraloka, where he spends 40 verses. Let me count. So starting from verse 245 of Prathama Annika, the first Annika of Tantraloka, Tantraloka has 36 Annikas, 36 chapters. And each chapter has lots and lots of, more than 500, 600, 700 verses. So here, 245 to 277. So how many verses? 245, 247 to 77 will be 30 verses. So about 28 verses. It spends just on meaning of Kim. So he says, Etat Kim. Take the sentence, Etat Kim. He said, the real samshaya or doubt is expressed only in the second part, in Sanskrit, Kim. The Etat part expresses knowledge that is shared between the speaker and the hearer. If I say, what is this to you, to Professor Mishra, I am showing, yes, I know this is in front of me. I am asking for further specification. So the noun, the Visheshya, Visheshangsha Sunishchita. So no question can take off without one known part. So like Samshaya, it is something known, and about that you're asking an unknown part. Then he says that this unknown part is not entirely, completely, forever unknown. It is knowable. That's why you're asking. If it is knowable, then as a possible answer to what? The answer, here he speaks like a Sankhya Satkaryavadi. The answer must be already there in a seed form in the question. Today we don't have time. Srimad Bhagavatam, please look up Uddhava Gita, 11th chapter. The mental children, Manasa Putras, okay, immaculately conceived by Brahma. Mental children, Sanakascha, Sanandascha, Tritiyascha, Sanatana, etc. Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana. They ask a question about the nature of human self. To whom do they ask? They ask Shiva Mahadeva. They ask, each of them ask, what am I? There, Mahadeva is puzzled, he can't answer. So Bhagavata says, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Krishna is telling Uddhava, this happened. Krishna is telling, you know why he could not? Because he was stuck in the realm of karma. So this is a question beyond the realm of karma. That is why Prashna Bijam, the seed for the question, where the question is coming from, was not known to him. So then, Narayana takes the form of a Hamsa swan. A swan is the symbol for Jnana. That's why the most wise person, liberated wise person, is called a great swan, Paramahamsa. Paramahamsyam Samhitaya. Swan. One of the greatest humanist statements in the Mahabharata. The statement is, there is nothing greater, not even gods, nothing greater than humanity. Na manushat sreshtotaram vikinchit. This statement is not made by a man or by a god. It's made by a swan. It's in Hamsa Gita. Hamsa watch. The swan says, Na manushat sreshtotaram vikinchit. So Hamsa form he assumes. And as a swan, the wisest things in the Mahabharata are said by Sadhus. And the Hamsa says, internally to Mahadev, doesn't want to discomfiture. Mahadev will ultimately answer. But Yovanta Pravisha, Pacham Udbodhet. So Narayana is saying, I will tell you in the form of an answer. And he says, you know the question Koham, it has two parts, Kah and Aham. The answer to the question is contained in the Prashna itself. You have to deeply meditate on the question. This is why questions are important. Now, how is that? That you look up in Buddha Gita? Because it's an Advaitic answer. It says, anyone who asks you, who am I? You should say, I am you. In the Bhagavad. Right? As a result, you would say, well then bhakti will not be possible unless there is Dvitva, unless there is duality, bhakti will not be possible. There is a later in the Ashtottara 108 Upanishads, there is a Mahopanishad. In Mahopanishad, there is a stuti of Narayana, which says, Tad abhinnam mam paripalaya kripalaya. You please protect me, you who is non-distinct from me. Tad abhinnam mam paripalaya. Mahopanishad. Okay. Now, then he says, it is like a bud, like an unblossomed flower. The question is a bud in which the answer part is as yet unblossomed, unopened. I'll just read one verse and then I'll pass on to the conclusion. Katha anudghatita, as yet unexposed, unopened, unudghatita. Udghatanam means opening, inauguration. So, as yet uninaugurated, unexposed. That is the form of in consciousness itself. It's a panpsychist kind of background. All these visheshas, these special answers, they are already flowing as powers. Bhava prasaravatmana prasaranti swasamvitti. That self-awareness, swasamvitti, which is prakasha vimarsha swarupa, which is of the nature of the light of awareness, passively illuminating, and the reflexive self-awareness, which is the Vimarsha Shakti. What does it do? The Vimarsha Shakti, reflexive awareness, assumes playfully the role of a questioner, Prashtri, Shishyatmatangara. It makes itself a disciple. Devi herself. Now, Devi, goddess, in the Tantras, is the source of all jnana. all wisdom. But she is always asking the question. Shiva answers. Devi, who should be as the most beautiful imaginable being, she should be the dance, knowledge of dance. But Shiva assumes the role of dance teacher because he is not Raj. Rajashekar in Kavya Prakasha, not Kavya Prakasha, Kavya Mimamsa, he has that beautiful verse. Evam Taraya Devi Bhagavatikam, Evam Kurushvanga Kavi, Bhatyuche Nama, Kunjayagra Charanam, Mam Pashyatavat. Look at me how I am dancing. Mam Pashyatavat Titam. Devim Nartayata, Swavaktra Murajena, Ambodharadvanina, Shambhorva, Paripantu Lambitalaya, Cheda Hatas Talika. So he is teaching her. There is no percussion. So he is teaching her the layers, like the talika, like the clapping. May those clappings protect us. This was the first. Prashtri Shishyatmatam Gata. So then, in another book, Abhinavgupta will say, the ultimate vastu, essential substance of this world, is in that secret relationship of question and answer. Vastu cha prashna taduttara rupam. Vastu. Now, you could say contextually, there the topic is the vastu, our subject matter. Okay. I had thought as a counterpoint. After in this lecture, we are closely following Abhinavgupta's analysis of the indispensability of the question and answer structure as the ideal format, not only of pedagogy, but of logico-philosophical as well as contemplative spiritual discourse. But I want to go claim something deeper than discourse. What is so great about asking questions? In reply, with due doubt and dithering, let me suggest the speculative metaphysics of my own. Of course, as a learning tool, questioning is the best way to deepen our understanding, to make the knowledge gathered our own. For even if the first information you gather, for example, like qualities cannot hang in air, there cannot be grins without mouths. This is bookish and common, like a generic email sent to everyone. If your response, instead of I get it, is but why? Those of you who are interested in English prose literature should look up at this poem, a beautiful, a little on the political side, but profound, short essay by Virginia Woolf called Why. Like if you answer anything that you answer, there are some children like that. Okay, very hard to talk to. Everything you say, they will say, but why? Why cannot we imagine grins without cats, smells without smelly particles, or tastes without food? The question, even if not answered to your satisfaction, would put a stamp of personal knowledge in your understanding. So that's the first importance of a question. By questioning a generic statement, a matter of information, which is like, the source of all knowledge. As you know, there is only one Sarvajna in the world, which is called Google. Right? Google should be part of Vishnu Sahasranama. Because it knows everything you ask. Let me tell you. But generic knowledge. That's not my knowledge. It becomes my knowledge by asking questions. But why? Different people ask different questions. Okay. Secondly, why I'm answering in 3 levels. The question, why are questions so important? Secondly, my questions are asked to someone. A teacher, a preacher, a doctor, a scientist, a fellow pupil, a neighbor, an expert on a subject, even a student or a child. Not only to a doctor. Why the doctor to a patient? How much is your pain? In the scale of 1 to 10. Okay. Anyone who is really suffering from pain should really slap the doctor. You know, like, what do you mean? What does that scale mean? Right. But you have to say, in New York it's even worse. If you say, I don't know how to place it in 1 to 10, they show you a picture with emojis. It's this much pain and then this much pain. As if that helps gather and measure the intensity of the pain. But then we live in emoji land. So the act of inquiry immediately opens up the possibility of a social interaction. A non-coercive act of addressing. When the question is not rhetorical or hostile, but genuinely shows a gap in my understanding, a gap about which I can confide in my interlocutor. And that is why the Gita says, yes, you can serve your teacher, you can take his cows, you can take his dog out for a walk. That is seva. You can also, in the beginning and end, do a lot of pranipata. But between pranipata and seva, you have to do pariprashna. Tadavritti pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Unfortunately, in India now, even from the state level, pranipata and seva is encouraged. Pariprashna is not encouraged too much. Thirdly, that leads me to the third and most important point, that my asking a question instead of making a theoretical claim or practical recommendation helps my interlocutor, in this case my readers, know me. I mean, this is part of a book, that's right. So, our lacuna match. I have a lacuna, the interlocutor has a lacuna. It is interesting, my listener feels that this author has the same question as I have. If that happens, the best communication happens. I ask a sawal, I ask a question, and somebody will say, I have been thinking about that question. And immediately, the 2 questions come together. And we have what? Saviryam Gravava. Sarnava. We have the same question. Finally, there is a sacrifice. Every question sincerely asked is a judgment. Sacrifice. What do we sacrifice? We sacrifice the most precious thing we have, our priggishness, our smugness, our ankar. In order to ask a question, you have to be like Draupadi at the end, not in the beginning. In the beginning, she was holding on to her clothes. At the end, she opened her hand, and then help came. That doesn't excuse Dushasana, but it shows you have to openly ask the question, whatever you don't know. Even after a whole class has been taught on you in history of Western philosophy, you should feel free to ask. But then who is this Aristotle that you don't know? What did Descartes mean by I think therefore I exist? Is that a deductive argument? You can ask that question. And by asking that question, you are giving up publicly the pride that I noticed. I've passed many exams on this. That's why father, my teacher of Nyaya, he genuinely used to ask, I didn't understand that. I said, sir, you have taught me just last week. He said, yes, I taught you, you understood. But when I think deeply, I actually don't understand this. This is the best thing that the wisest person can do. Now, here comes the metaphysics. Vaisheshika philosophers and atomists and some great people, ordinary Nyaya, thinks of the world as a totality of things. When we consider someone's relations, we reject that view and we come to the Tractator's view. The world is not a totality of things, the world is a totality of facts. When you add somebody like Whitehead to this, you say it's not a totality of facts, it's a totality of processes. Processes are dynamic, facts are static. If you add a little bit of sprinkle some Marxism on this, then you say the world is a totality of deeds, acts of buying and selling, acts of producing things by labor. World is totality of actions. But then, the conclusion that I want to draw, I agree and I confess, I would like to learn, especially from my commentator, where are the gaps in my argument. I don't have full argument, but even if the world is taken as a totality of relational concatenations, there are gappy pockets of the open future, undone tasks, undecidable alternatives, and insoluble difficulties of understanding will be left out of such an ontology. But the world contains those difficulties. And my first generic name for those difficulties is very simple, problem. And a question, if it denotes anything, it denotes a problem. It could be a practical problem. Okay? If before you can speak, your microphone starts shouting, which happens sometimes, making a screeching sound. You say, how to stop this? That's a question, that's a problem. But theoretical problems are there. Who am I? How is the mind related to the body? There can be WH questions and there can be yes-no questions. Since wars, human wars, are not irresistible natural calamities but are made by humans, the question, will there be a nuclear war all over the world in 2025? That question is not a natural question only. It's almost asked to the proper people. If I ask, Sharad Deshpande, that's an information question. You would say, how would I know? And if he's like Iqbal, he would say, even God doesn't know. Because it depends upon the will of God at that time. God has not willed it anyway for a devout person. But if I ask, Putin and Modi and the Chinese premier and the Iranian premier, then I'm not just asking to predict. I'm asking them, will you guys actually make a nuclear war? Because this is under their control. So, Prashna Bijam, one has to understand. So, similarly, if we ask, will global warming be stopped? Then it's not just a question, it's also a reminder, a chetavani, to say, will you humans behave in such a way that prevents such a, this time, species wiping out war, or will you not? This openness of the future and all past and present times were once the future, I think is best but preserved if we take reality not as a totality of facts or even of options like the Jaina, Syatvad alternatives, not even just processes, but as an open set of questions slash topics, or more accurately, problems. Orthodox faith in the Veda would perhaps say that the Nasagya Sutta questions, Kimavariva, Korkasya Sharman, all those questions were not asked by the world. But here there is a difficulty. If you say these questions were asked by somebody who does not know how the word originated, then there is a difficulty. Because the standard orthodox interpretation of every Vedic word, especially Rig Veda, is that it has no speaker. Apollution, a speakerless sentence is which contains a series of questions. Can you interpret that as those questions basically mean that the speaker of those questions does not know? You cannot say that there is no speaker. So what does Yam Visishtik Kuta Babu, where did this word come from? What does that mean? Whose ignorance? The best candidate is God's ignorance. But God's ignorance is a contradiction of God. God is defined as omniscient, no ignorance. So it is not God's ignorance, it is not the Rishi's ignorance, it is not the poet's ignorance, it is what? I would say it's the question of reality. So, my proposal is that, independently of any human perspective, the world, a work in progress, is made up of questions, problems, ignorances, which are, Advaita Vedanta has no problem. Ajnana is what makes the multifarious world. And it is Bhavarupa, it's a positive thing also. Ignorances, which are best represented by interrogative sentences. Sadhava, asadhava. This question, not asked by me or you, but this question is what Adivachanita is. It's not a question, I don't know, there's a correct answer. There is no correct answer. My ignorance, the Maya that I have, is that real or unreal? It's not an absurd question. Does it have an answer? No. It's just a question. That's what makes multiplicity in the world. Okay? Avidyaya, this, I mean, Durnir, Mama, Yogindaratma, Lakshi says, Durnirniyatu. Durnirniya sounds like it is very hard to determine. It's impossible to determine. That's why the best form you can express that element which makes world out of consciousness is question. Right? The notion that of knowledge independent, ignorance tolerant, but knowledge supporting substance I find in myself is the notion of a malleable stuff, a gooey kind of stuff, not yet shaped, which is yet to form. Perhaps one can take away my thunder of novelty by remarking that this comes close to Aristotle Aquinas' notion of matter as potentiality. In order to discover what the world is made of, it is best, therefore, to look at the future, the part of the world which is still retaining that malleable quality. So instead of excluding the future from the world, future is the interesting part of the world. That's how the world was always. Okay. We have made it boring by making a few billions of years into the past. And of course, if you have an interesting enough view, then the lost questions like did Alexander the Great's mother have a mole in the lower back or not? questions are not just unanswerable, lost. We, of course, we are realists about the past. We think there is a correct answer. But there could be questions about the past which are not answerable, in which case the past also retains some of its this thing. So, with that, I would end with a questioning Vedic mantra. Okay. But since question can lead within a possible range, maybe to a finite or infinite disjunction of answers. According to some semantics of questions, a question actually means or denotes the set of all possible answers. This is called the Hamlin semantics. I just picked it up from Eric, actually. This is more or less the standard. But this is alternative, they are or, like this or that. So instead of ending with Kasmai Devaya Vishadidevano, which is a questioning mantra, I would end with this beautiful, a grammarian from Bengal, I'm forgetting his name, Ashoka Kluchka gave me this verse, gave this alternative stuti. You cannot tell whether it is a stuti of Shiva or stuti of Vishnu. So between the two kanchis, in the middle of the two kanchis, you can put them. Okay? We are sorry. In my own sampradaya, Suresh Swamiji suffered so badly. They took out his eyes, the Shaiva. But then, this verse is an alternative verse. It's not directly a question, but it's a disjunction. Shashikanda Mauli, Sashikanda Mauliva. Shashikanda Mauli means one whose crest is in a crescent moon. A piece of the moon is his headdress. That Shiva. Shikanda means peacock feather. Sashikanda Mauli is somebody whose head is on a peacock. Head has a peacock feather. Shashikanda Mauli, Sashikanda Mauliva. Sitamega Charu. Beautiful, Charu, like a white cloud. Shitimega Charuva. Shiti means dark, black. That's why Shiva is called Shitikanta. Sitamega Charu, Shitimega Charuva. Ramaya Vilasiva, Mama Kinchidastu Hridi Vastu Srantata.
Friends, now you know what Professor Arindam Chakravarti is all about. Like because of we didn't have much time and other constraints of mainly the time we could not get more from him. Professor Arindam Chakravarti, we are thankful to you. And before I go on to Professor Saran, I would like to just touch upon a few things. Like see how he has taken us from a tool through so many things, starting from Descartes, Plato to Nasagya Sukta to Uddhava Gita, Ramayana. As I told you, very few people can do like this. I am, reminded of again Sri Harsa, who says, Tambula in Sri Khantana Khanta Gadya last verse. Tambula Dvayamasanam Labhate Yakkanna Tukye Swarat Yashakshat Kurute Samadhisuparat Brahma Pramodarnam Yatkapyam Madhuvarsi Dharsita Paraha Tapkesu Yasko Kayaha Sri Harsa Kavehe Kute Kute Ude Dasya Abhyudhyat Yam. So this is the erudition range. Like Sri Harsa, Vachaspati Mishra, we have Professor Arindam Chakravarti, Professor Mukhopadhyay with us. Professor Mukhopadhyay, I do namaskaram to you from here. I don't know whether he is able to hear us. Professor, I have so many questions to ask, but I will be leaving shortly, so I don't want to put it. Only one thing I wanted to tell you, this is a problem that you have raised in Abhinavgupta. I remember, one verse that Abhinavgupta brings in his commentary to in Paragrasical Varana. He says, "Edu prasara sancharo akala kalitam yataha ek rupam evedam satvam prasnottarat matam." Prasna and Uttara are same. Hello, Parabhaktarika and Paramabhattaraka are one and the same thing. And that is why he says Abhinavgupta Trisula Prerunadi Mayasya Yat Uttarasya Trisura Prerunadi Mayasya Yat Anuttaram Visranti Sthanam. This is what is important in Professor whatever he has told, like many things he has not told as we have seen. The importance of silence we should have one talk from you. I think somewhere some other time in one of your articles you have written like how Buddha says, how Shankara says, how this comes everywhere around, and how there is not much distance between question and answer. And I don't have much time. I would like to invite Dr. Saran. Before that, friends, I have composed a verse because I have to leave. I'll be listening to you, Professor Saran.
There is scope for Prasna.
Yeah, there is a lot of slopes.
It is there.
Scope. Srotra Sahasra Matya Subhagam Srotra Sahasra Matya Subhagam Rarajyate Yo Avanu Prithibhyam Yo Rarajate Vairo
এই যে
Virasanicha Lasate
বলছি কোয়েশ্চেনটা লেখার এখানে দেখো তো আমার কোনো জায়গা আছে কিনা
Samayan Mudas Puratiyaha
আমি
Tarkamrita
শুনতে পাচ্ছি না তোমার কথা
Bhabha Kodya
না দেখতে পাচ্ছি না
Vastva Vinapyena Naha Asmakam Bhabha. So thank you, Professor. Now I call upon Professor Kranti Saran. We have a celebrated person from Ashoka University who did his PhD in Harvard University in the Department of Philosophy in 2011, and since then a fellow in philosophy at Harvard and a visiting fellow at the Center for Philosophy at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Most recently, he has been an assistant professor in the Department of Philosophy at Delhi University. His research interests span in the areas of perception, attention, bodily awareness, introspection, mimicry, and how these topics are related to our moral relation to others. A common thread that runs through his research is a concern with understanding facets of our cognition, its faculties and modes, its embodiment, its consequences for our relation to ourselves and our immediate social milieu, and finally the manner in which these topics interact with culture and so either constrain or enable dimensions of our moral relation to others. We are grateful to you, Professor Saran, for your time and that you have taken pains to come to such a long distance from your place.
He is now an associate professor.
Associate professor, yeah, that's what I told already, but we always call them as professors. So, Professor Saran, please, and I will listen to you online, and I take leave of all of you. Sorry for this. Chachi, please take over and conduct the proceedings.
So, thank you very much for this, for inviting me to comment on this paper. So, I don't know if I should thank you too much, because how does one follow after that, right? So, when one hears Professor Chakrabarty's talk, it is like a very rich feast of the most. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, this one doesn't work. Can you hear me? Yeah. So it's like having a very rich feast of the most interesting and exotic items to eat. And as he said, I don't want to do this boring metaphysics. So I'm going to raise some questions and point out some things. And after just the feast that he has offered, I'm going to come and maybe just say, that's wonderful, but can you live on that? Can you eat it? Or maybe actually dal chawal is not so bad. So unfortunately, I'm going to take a somewhat more boring approach, but raise some questions for him about the kind of picture that he is putting forward. And but I want to thank him also for this incredibly rich talk, and see these comments not so much as criticisms, but as maybe adding a few things onto the table and seeing how they might all fit together. So I want to start by just talking about, Professor Chakravarti's talk was very much focused on the semantics of questioning of the derivatives. But I want to zoom out a bit, and actually this also speaks to some of his earlier work that he has talked about in discourse ethics. But I want to just talk about some of the very profound and important moral aspects to questioning that perhaps are so deep that they become quite invisible. And I want to share some passages with you on that. And the first is a passage from the Gorgias in Plato. And I think what this shows is that the act of dialogue, the act of asking questions and answers, and how we engage in that shows up. It reveals, sometimes even when we don't want it to reveal, what our values actually are. Right? So I want to read this passage. He says, "So, I'm afraid to pursue my examination of you, for fear that you would take me to be speaking with eagerness to win against you, rather than to have our subject become clear. For my part, I'd be pleased to continue questioning you if you're the kind of man that I am. Otherwise, I would drop. And what kind of man am I? One of those who would be pleased to be refuted if I say anything untrue, and who, however, wouldn't be any less pleased. I would be pleased to refute anyone who says anything untrue. One who, however, wouldn't be any less pleased to be refuted than to refute." And this was again speaks to some of the issues of the kind of humility that you were talking about. "For I count being refuted a greater good, insofar as it is a greater good for oneself to be delivered from the worst thing there is than to deliver someone else from it. I don't suppose there's anything quite so bad for a person as having false beliefs about the things we're discussing right now, which is the fundamental nature of the world. This is an absolutely critical question. So if you say you're this kind of man too, let's continue the discussion. But if you think we should drop it, let's be done with it and break it off." Now, why have I chosen this passage to bring before you? Because notice how in the give and take of question and answer, there is a revelation of one's own values. Most of us don't like being refuted. Most of us don't like being shown demonstratively. Imagine you're shown demonstratively what you have said is absolutely false. But we don't react the way Plato is talking over here, right? We tend to get quite upset. And what does that show about us? Now, so this practice has a very profound revelation, not just of the material that is the direct subject of the discussion, but in fact of the values of the people discussing it. Right? So that's the first point I want to make. I also want to point out that there is, and again, this is something that Professor Chakravarti has touched on, I think, in his paper. There is the value that dialogue is itself expressive of, right? This is the very act of dialogue, when done well, question and answer. What values does it express? And this is a very lovely passage by the philosopher Jean Hampton, who unfortunately died when she was very young, but has already made some amazing contributions. She says, look, the Bill of Rights is only a part of our history. Of course, she's speaking in an American context, but I think points carry over into our context also. The Bill of Rights is only part of our history. The persistence of racial discrimination, sexism, over here, of course, we have casteism, patriarchy, and exploitation betrays a commitment by many to the second-class status of some of their fellows. Because they have that status, some people are perceived as appropriate agents of coercion by those of higher status, who need not argue with their inferiors. In contrast, a person who is committed to philosophizing with another is rejecting the idea that she has a higher status that permits her to exercise control over the other's beliefs, and is instead allowing and respecting her opponent's ability to formulate and decide on his own beliefs freely. Anyone committed to philosophizing with her opponent is thus committed to respecting him as a human being. That is, she is respecting him not necessarily as a virtuous person, or a smart person, or a person who satisfies some particular social ideal, but as a human being who can and ought to choose how to lead his own life. Hence, a society committed to philosophizing with all human beings would also be committed to the kind of respect for one another that is the foundation of justice. If a philosopher finds herself in a society which is committed neither to justice nor to reasoned debate, then she will indeed be a divisive force in the community as she strives for reform of practices that she cannot tolerate. So, this is just to flesh out some of the kinds of points that Professor Chakravarti has already made about the nature and the as it were, the virtues of dialogue and question. It's not just that, I would say that of course the focus of his discussion was the particular inner structure of question and answer, where there's a bit of ignorance and there's a bit of knowledge and they come together. But I think that in fact the nature of the question-answer interaction, the nature of dialogue in general, has all these, I mean, it is in fact not just a beautiful house, it is in fact a beautiful palace. It is a much larger structure, and I'm trying to just flesh out what some of those aspects are. The next bit I want to just share with you is the value of dialogue as a means to other valuable ends. And it's not just, I mean, here it's inquiry, but inquiry has a kind of dialogical structure, whether you are speaking to someone else or speaking to yourself and thinking through an issue in yourself. It has a kind of, as Buber said, a kind of I-DAO structure. And this is from the Yog Vashisht. It's a wonderful chapter on behavior of the seeker. He says, the wise man regards strength, intellect, efficiency, and timely action as the fruits of inquiry. Indeed, kingdom, prosperity, enjoyment, as well as final liberation are all the fruits of inquiry. The spirit of inquiry protects one from the calamities that befall the unthinking fool. When the mind has been rendered dull by the absence of inquiry, even the cool rays of the moon turn into deadly weapons, and the childish imagination throws up a goblin in every dark spot. Hence, the non-inquiring fool is really a storehouse of sorrow. It is the absence of inquiry that gives rise to actions that are harmful to oneself, to others, and to numerous psychosomatic illnesses. Now, that inquiry is deeply connected to, you might even think it is constitutive of a certain kind of rational activity, of reflection on what you are doing, why you are doing it, on thinking through all of that. I mean, these are very, very connected. And I just want to just on this point, I just want to share this lovely poem, which is from this collection, Poems from the Sanskrit, because it again, I think what I love about this poem is that it shows how, we always talk about if you are protected by the gods, or so you're being cursed by the gods. But how does that happen? It doesn't happen in the way that you think it happens, like in some, Amarjita Katha thing where somebody appears before you. Rather, it happens in a more subtle way, and it's like this. Those whom the gods would keep in safety, they protect, not as a shepherd guards his sheep, but by the gift of a wise intellect. Nor do the gods appear in warriors armor clad to strike men down with sword or spear. To whom they would destroy, they first make man. And again, I just draw that connection between this constitutive connection between a kind of inquiry, dialogue, a dialogical structure, and rationality. And you can see how it is that discussion, that dialogue, whether internal or carried out externally, that is in fact protective of your well-being, your integrity, all of these things. And in fact, that is destroyed when you cannot have that kind of inquiry. I leave you to draw the obvious connections to our situation today. Now, I want to move to the more metaphysical aspects of Professor. So just to wrap up these 3 points. Now, what am my suggestion to you is that these 3 somewhat boring facets might not be so boring after all. And then what I've tried to show with these different quotations is, in fact, these are all touching on profound aspects of our humanity, of our social organization, of our standing as human beings, maybe. So and I think the question I want you to ask yourself is, isn't this enough? Do we need more than this? Do questions and answers have to carry more than this weight? They are already carrying a tremendous amount. Do we want to give them an additional metaphysical burden? Right? And I want to come to that now, the more metaphysical aspect. Now, I think there's something deeply right about what Professor Chakrabarty is saying about the nature of inquiry and the nature of asking questions. Sorry. And I want to get to that by talking about what I'll call the fractal structure of inquiry. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the idea of fractals, ask yourself the following question. What is the length of the coastline of India? You can picture India in front of you and I'll think, okay, what is the length of the coastline of India? Now, this is a puzzle because depending on what the minimum unit of length that you take to start measuring out the coastline, you're going to get radically different answers. In fact, if you can start out by having 100-kilometer units and map out, just imagine 100-kilometer long sticks that you place along the coast and you get one measure. 50 kilometers, one measure. Ultimately, you could go down to 1 meter, but then you could also go down to a centimeter. And remember, the coast is curved, right? The coast is curved, there are beaches, waters coming in. Eventually, when you get to the subatomic level, it becomes almost infinitely long. The point is that there's a structure that replicates itself as you zoom in, as you go deeper in. And there's a wonderful animation which you can all see online called the Koch snowflake. And what has that got to do with Professor Chakrabarty's topic? It is that there is no end to questioning. There is always another level of questioning that you can go to. There is always deeper that you can go to. Now, typically our questioning is constrained by our pragmatic needs, our pragmatic constraints. But fundamentally, the questioning that you can conduct, suppose you had an all-powerful mind that had all the time in the world, there would be no end to question. It has a kind of endless depth, which is, I'm calling the fractal structure of inquiry. But how should we characterize this? How should we characterize this? Is this something that is this open nature of reality? The fundamental question before us is, how do we characterize this open nature of reality before us? Professor Chakrabarty's response, which is here under Q1, sorry, I'm just taking a small break. He says, my proposal is that independently of any human perspective, the world, a work in progress, is made up of questions, problems, ignorances, which are best represented by interrogative sentences. Most of those problems would have existed even if these English interrogative sentences which represented them did not exist. That last sentence is not so important. We just focus really on the first sentence. Now, one puzzle in understanding this is that typically a problem or a difficulty, as he has talked about it, is a problem for someone in a particular way for achieving some kind of end, right? So until you specify all of those parameters, it's not clear what you mean by this just abstract form of a question. In fact, as you say, is made up of questions, problems, ignorances, which are best independently of any human perspective. The world is made up of these questions and problems and ignorances. Now, it is true that it might be independent of human perspectives, but can it be independent of any perspective at all? And the worry is that there is no contentful notion of this perspectivelessness. Now, you might object. I think one objection that he has is no, but look at the very special nature of Vedic utterances. They are speakerless, right? Now, of course, that is not a claim that you get for free. You have to defend that, right? And of course, as we know in the Indian philosophical tradition, that was a claim that the Buddhists certainly poo-pooed completely and said, and said, this is just, come on, this is a bit of philosophical fantasy. And so that's the first tricky bit, is that does it really make sense to speak of this notion of perspectiveless problems, perspectiveless questions? And that is connected to, I want to just, I'm going to end very soon, don't worry. This idea that goes back to a very famous passage in David Lewis's work on causation, where he talks about principles of invidious discrimination. And this is, I'm here at Q2, so I'm almost done. And this is a quote from David Lewis. He says, we sometimes single out among all the causes of some event and call it the cause, as if there were no others. Or we single out a few as the causes, calling the rest mere causal factors or causal conditions. Or we speak of the decisive or real or principal cause. We may select the abnormal or extraordinary causes or those under human control, those we deem good or bad, or just those we want to talk about. I have nothing to say about these principles of invidious discrimination. I am concerned with the prior question of what it is to be one of the causes. And I want to draw a contrast between what is Lewis saying? He's saying, look, the way we carve up what is a versus from what is a mere supporting condition is just a reflection of our pragmatic interests, our pragmatic take on the world. He's saying, I'm not interested in what principles we use to carve up what is a real cause versus a contributing cause. I just want to know what is a cause, punct. And notice that in Lewis's formulation, that question makes sense what is a cause in this kind of perspectiveless way. My contention is, or my worry is, well, does that make sense for questions? And the concern is, well, it's not obviously clear that there is such a notion available, right? And I want to just end by saying, and this is a small clarificatory question that I just want to end with, that, look, this just goes back to the way you formulated your thesis. My proposal is that independently of any human perspective, the world, a work in progress, is made up of questions, problems, ignorances, which are best represented by interrogative sentences. So there, the worry is that however the way the world is, what Professor Chakrabarty is talking about is just some sort of arbitrary way of representing the way the world is. There are many ways to represent the world. There are many ways to represent the way we are sitting in this room. You could do it pictorially. You could do it using language, right? That's just a particular kind of representation. So is an interrogative sentence is just a particular mode of representation you could choose to characterize the openness of the world. It doesn't have any special connection to what the fundamental metaphysical nature of the world is. Just like there's no fundamental the metaphysics of pictures or the metaphysics of writing don't, in their format, recapitulate the metaphysics of what it is that they're representing. This is the fundamental distinction between what is doing the representing and the features that it represents in so representing. The famous so-called ing-ed ambiguity, ing/ed ambiguity. So, all right, I think at that my comments close, and thank you very much for this very rich paper, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for your comments.
I would like to respond to all the questions.
Okay. So now the presentation is open for questions. Yeah. And I would like to say that questions can be asked either in Hindi or in Sanskrit or English. Three languages.
सर्वेभ्यो नमो नमः। अपनाम व्याख्यानम अतीव रुचिकरम ज्ञानप्रदम आसीत् बहु विषयकं च आसीत्। वाक् इत्यस्य किम् इत्यर्थः तत्र जगदीशः गदाधरश्च वदति शब्दशक्ति प्रकाशिकायां एवं च शक्तिवादग्रन्थे जिज्ञासितेऽर्थे किं शब्दस्य शक्तिः एवं च न्यायसूत्रकारः गौतमः तावत् वदति समानानेक धर्मोपपत्तेः विप्रतिपत्तेः उपलब्ध्यनुपलब्ध्यवस्था तस्य विशेषापेक्षो विमर्शः संशयः। तर्हि पुष्पदन्तः तावत् वदति किमिह किं कायः स खलु किमुपायस्त्रिभुवनं किमाधारो धातः एतावान् श्लोकः विद्यते। तर्हि अस्माकं जिज्ञासा विद्यते संशय किम् इत्यनयोः भेदः अस्ति अभेदो वा अस्ति किं संशयः कारणं भवितुं शक्नोति प्रश्नस्य किम् इत्याख्यस्य प्रश्नस्य कारणं संशयः भवितुं शक्नोति उत संशय किम् इत्यनयोः अभेदः इति जिज्ञासा विषयः।
रामनाथ प्रोफेसर रामनाथ स्वान करें।
आपका व्याख्यान बहुत रोचक था। मेरी दो तीन छोटी छोटी जिज्ञासा है कि एक तो आप जैसे विद्वान के लिए बिल्कुल आवश्यक है कि जो टेक्निकल टर्म्स है उसका भी अंग्रेजी ट्रांसलेशन है। जैसे आपने एक शब्द बोला कि रिलीजियस संस्कृत स्कॉलर, तो जो धर्म है भारत में उसके 3 पार्ट हैं। एक तो है आचाराध्याय, एक है जो जूरिस्प्रूडेंस इसको बोलते हैं, और मतलब व्यवहाराध्याय, तो तीसरा है प्रायश्चित्ताध्याय। तो धर्म का जो ये स्वरूप है कि या तो विधि हो या जूरिस्प्रूडेंस हो या प्रायश्चित हो, या धर्म है जो धारणार्थ धर्म इत्यादि, या जो आदि शंकराचार्य कहते हैं कि प्राणिनाम जगतम स्थिति कारणम प्राणिनाम च अभ्युदय निश्रेयस हेतु स धर्म। तो आपका जो कथ्य था वो क्या ये था कि जो संस्कृत के लोग हैं वो इस धर्म को मानने वाले हैं या पोप ड्रिवन रिलीजन से होगा? एक पहला है। दूसरा जो था कि आपने गॉड का प्रयोग ईश्वर के लिए किया, गॉड का प्रयोग इंद्रिय के लिए किया। एक आइंस्टाइन की जिज्ञासा मेरे मन में आती है कि उसको एक बार प्रश्न पूछा कि डू यू बिलीव इन गॉड? बोला यस। व्हाट टाइप ऑफ गॉड? बोला आई बिलीव इन दैट गॉड which doesn't control us from outside, it controls us from within. तो रिलीजन वो है या अंतर्यामी ईश्वर, जिसको वेदारण्यक में या केवल को मैत्रेयी से या गार्गी से कहते हैं। दूसरी जिज्ञासा ये थी कि आपका क्या तात्पर्य था, और एक जो अंत में था कि आपने टोटलिटी को डिफाइन किया। तो एज पर पुरुष सूक्त, what is the nature of totality? These are
अन्यो भी प्रश्न अस्ति वा? Yeah.
So thank you so much. You have highly insightful, informative lecture. But I'm Dr. Jayanti from JDNC, Jhansi Memorial College. Sir, listen to you is something very wonderful. But with my little knowledge, there are some queries I just want to. You said that method of questioning is important. So what is coming to my mind that when we talk about method of questioning, is it necessary that means the person whom we are asking the question should also able to address our answer? That is the first condition should be there. Take for the example, when Arjun asked Krishna. So Arjun asked only to the Krishna. He didn't ask any other person. Or when Nachiketa asked the question to Yama, he asked only the Yama because he knew that the answer will be given. So when we go by the questioning method, we also should, the person whom we are asking, must be able to clear my doubts. Otherwise, that question has no meaning. And sometimes also question doesn't come if you find that the person is not able to address your answer. So that is one thing. And sometimes also, like you said that Draupadi, and when she questioned that in front of the Mahaguru, like Bhishma Pitamaha was there, Dronacharya was there, so many intellectuals. But sometimes if they do not maintain a silence, what happened to that question? So that is one thing. Like in Buddha's case, he maintained a silence to metaphysical questions. So what does the silence mean? Does it that he is an opportunist, or he is an escapist, or he wants to maintain a balance so that further problems will not arise? So what if the silence comes and the person will not get answer, then how do you clear your doubts? And many of the philosophical dialogues or philosophical questionings are important because you know that at least you will get some rational answer. Because otherwise, in the political platform, if you see that everybody is questioning, and the person who is answering doesn't have a tolerance. Like, so when we start, what happened to that answer? My, because I know.
The questions addressed to people who are not equipped to answer the question. You asked what happens to them. Simple answer, they are wasted. Those questions are wasted.
Yeah, please.
So, like
Aditya
others,
Gupta.
I'm Aditya, I teach Department of Philosophy at University. Like others, I'm also thankful to Yusuf for such a wonderful lecture, and especially the second half of your lecture. So my observation is from your first half of your lecture. See, you said that if answers are redundant, then to question is meaningful. But I personally think that in certain situations, when all possible answers are nonsensical, are redundant, then even question becomes redundant. Perhaps Buddha's silence came out of that nonsensical nature of answers, all possible answers. The second observation about your remark that we should read Ramayana and Mahabharata philosophically. I personally think that before reading it philosophically, we should read it impartially as well. Your statement that that word and deer, those were killed because they were making love in public. So those were animals, right? Can we make a distinction between private and public in case of those animals? They were killed because they were bird and deers, not because they were making love in either in public or in private. So these are two observations. Like, can we make this distinction? Thank you very much.
Yes, please. That is not working.
So thank you for your insightful lecture. I'm Kanika Saraf from Delhi University. I had a few observations. There were just a couple of clarifications which I'm looking out for. There was a statement which you made, a question is always pregnant with a set of alternatives. So if I understand it correctly, a question will only work in a scenario when minimum, like bare minimum, two alternatives are available. One will not be an alternative, there should be two. So in that manner, a question will always work in a dualistic setup. And my question is, with respect to this statement, that even if would there be a possibility of even one question in a non-dualistic realization? Like I'm doing my PhD on Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, and in that text particularly, Patanjali talks about asampragyan samadhi, and there is state of nirvichar nirvitar. In that context, would you be able to tell about the what happens to questions? Would they exist? Do they cease to exist? The second clarification is needed when, with respect to the particular title which says Abhinavgupta on the spiritual significance of questions. In this title, I want to ask you that could there indeed be any form of spirituality connected with questions? Spirituality, which is used in a spirituality here in this context, is used in a very open-ended sense. Where I come from, how I understand it, in the Indian milieu, spirituality is seen as a darshanik in the form of a darshan. That's why we say we understand it as a darshan vibhag, in that manner. And my submission is that in this title, as a spiritual significance of questions, like with respect to questions, can't it be awareness significance of questions or worldly significance of questions or language significance of questions? Why is it a spiritual significance of questions? What is the meaning of spiritual here? like in what context is spiritual used? It could be a self-reflective significance, but not in the form of a non-dualistic spiritual significance. That's my submission. The third clarification that I wanted to make was, okay, with respect to the speakerlessness or the apolish of um, context of why no speaker, with respect to the text which have been picked up, you said that question is arises out of a problem, and then there were further discussions on that. There was a very interesting term, prashna bija. Now, again, it's like an extension of the first question. Could this be addressed through Ratambara Pragya, the bija, the prashna bija, which happens, these gaps and fissures, like Professor Kranti also pointed out, these fractal structure of inquiry, wherein he's saying that there is no end to questioning. Why is it that we are searching externally, outside of a human being, for finding the answer which lies within? Like when Ma'am said about Buddha, or when Mahavir, or when we talk about all of these spiritual leaders, why is it that we take a speaker as a perceptible speaker when the text says that it is apolish, or when the text says it is speakerless? In my opinion, these are mistranslations when we're trying to take it as a perception, a perceptible being. Because when the language will cease to exist, the speaker will cease to exist. So it is about the language. It is not about the human entity per se. It is about going beyond the scope of language. And that is why in Taittiriya Upanishad they say Panchkosh. That's about it. Thank you.
One question we can take only more now, because there are some questions also online. So I think they also. सर सुभाषिनी आप भी पूछना चाहते हैं?
एक सवाल से
एक ही पूछिए चलिए।
सर प्रणाम सर, सभी को प्रणाम। सर हमारे न्याय शास्त्र में, क्योंकि आप न्याय के वेत्ता भी हैं, न्याय शास्त्र में ये भी आता है जैसा मैं फर्स्ट ये मैं बताया था कि स्थान का पुरुष होगा, ये भी संशय, और स्थान नवा एक कोटि की संशय दिखाई देता है। तो दीदी का थोड़ा सा मतभेद वहाँ आता है, तो इस दृष्टि में आपका फिलोसफी क्या हो सकता है, यही मैं जिज्ञासा।
सुभाषिनी बारिक
सर नमस्कार, बहुत अच्छा डेलिब्रेशन था। Many of my questions, whatever I wanted to ask, has been put by my predecessors. One was regarding Prashna Bija, cause of the question, and second one is regarding the spiritual significance of Abhinavgupta. One more, it is a simple clarification I would like to have. Whenever we ask WH questions, how questions or yes, no questions. Right now, we are directly, your deliberation was regarding the WH questions. When, my only ignorance, I can say, it is my ignorance. Can these WH questions are different from philosophical questions? Is philosophical question address a particular issue or a particular type of question? If at all it is, please clarify. Thank you.
So I would like, even without asking, sorry, that it will become too, unwieldy if I again wait for the online questions. Let me answer as quickly as possible the 7 questions and also respond to Kranti in the beginning. And then, if there is time, there can be infinite number of questions, but there cannot be infinite time before lunch. So, if there is time, then we'll take some questions from the online listeners. I think in the light of the last couple of points made by Kranti, some of the beginning, most of it, the first 70% of it is something that I really learned from, and it's very much promoting what I'm saying. In this talk, I didn't emphasize the moral aspects of questioning and question answer conversation model. But as Kranti said, in one paper, later on some other work, called Just Words, which is about the Sulabha Chanaka Samvada of Mahabharata, I have published. In this context, I would like to quickly go and very easily dispense with the question by the respected Professor Ramnath Char. Surely, I don't know where Pope came into his question. Perhaps he thought that because I'm speaking in English, I'm talking on English translation. I was not translating Dharma as religion. I'm not Chawar. I don't translate Dharma as religion. I don't think so. At all. Dharma should not be religion. Dharma is Buddha. In our Shastras, not Buddhism. That which is intolerable to me, not to inflict that to others, that is not. Natat pareshu sandathyat pratikulam yadatmana sankshepato hi ayam dharma kamad anya pravat. Mahabharata. This is not a statement by Pope. So please, between the two of you, let's leave Pope in Rome at peace. Unless you think that by giving this talk in English, which I did not do on 22nd of July, I am suggesting that it should be approved by the Pope. I don't know where that came from. And of course, I want to make it not allowed by Nyaya Vitarka Sabha. One little remark that if anyone looks at me and you, then I think people will think you are closer to the Pope than I am. So now comes the question of totality. You ask, was I defining totality? No, I was just using some standard definitions because the word Akhilam, Jagat, these words, they all mean totality. The concept of totality is itself a very philosophically interesting concept. Like Kim is a name of Vishnu, even Sarva is a name of Vishnu. In two spellings, Sarva, Sharva, Shivastha. But Vachaspati Mishra in Nyaya Kanika, commentary on Vidhi Vivek, he questions the very idea of Sarva. Sarvam Janati iti Sarva, totality. He says, when you say totality of everything that God knows, does this totality have a yatta or not? Does it have a limit or not? If you say Sarva has a limit, that's what in the refutation of the Buddhist concept of omniscience, Sarvajikatva, Kumarila and Shokavartika says, Sarvam, by itself the word Sarva doesn't mean anything. Like a Sarve Brahmana, Sarve Chandava. So all doesn't mean anything. It has to be a domain specific whole. It's a very interesting question. So I'm grateful to you for that part of the question.
One line I can speak.
Just
one.
let me speak.
Padosya Vishwa Bhutani Tripadasya Amritam. In that context,
Right.
I wanted to understand the nature of totality as per Toshu.
Right. Thank you very much. That's exactly where, even without going to Mimamsa, opposition to Sarvajnatva, Mimamsa is the only school which doesn't believe in yoga, this word Prashna Bijam, I'm sure you were reminded if you read Patanjali's Yoga Sutras carefully. Ishvara definition is Tattva Niratishayam Sarvajna Bijam. Right? So, directly opposed to that, by the way, just quickly, I'm going out of the order. When you talk about non-dualism or Advaitavada, you should not confuse that with Patanjali's view. Patanjali is a Sankhya Yoga system. And Prakriti Purusha Viveka is the nature of the ultimate Sankhya also. So, to refer to Yoga Sutra as a non-dualistic system, so non-dualistic that even Asti Nastiva, that alternative of, Ekakotika Samshaya, even that will be binary, and there will be no scope of Samshaya. That, I would say, is not very clear thinking. But there are other questions that you asked which are important. So, Purusha Sukta, there are only 3 words, right? Yo Antariksha Prithvi, and Pata, whatever, Chaturdasha Bhuma, Udbhuvasva Mahajana Tapasatna, etc. But whatever you say, Sarva, God is supposed to be, if you don't mind, like God, Ishvara, or Purusha, that Mahapurusha. Right? That is supposed to be beyond that, more than. Now the very idea of more than total. Total means everything. Everything that exists is totality. He says, Atyatishta Prashanga. So that is why you have a very genuine question. The rest of it, I think, was not so much a question. It was your opinion about something. To come back to gravity, I concede. Like the first quotation, not just politeness. I think what I should have said, you see, my view, because I got carried away, became a revisionary metaphysics. But I belong to the descriptive metaphysics because of my lineage. So I should say, reality contains things. So the Vaisheshika Padarthas are there, part of it. It also contains events. It also contains facts. It also contains processes. It also contains alternatives. And it contains problems, open questions. I should not say that everything that is real can be reduced to a question. But then you yourself offer an alternative to me, which is even more interesting, which is that these alternative metaphysics of what is reality and totality of could be looked upon as different filters through which you see the same reality. For which our pastor, if somebody wants me to quote Shastras, I can do that. I mean, like Ekam Sadve Prabodha or something, like that's exactly that. That there are many ways of describing the same reality. So I think I was at fault against my own view of things when I said everything is a question. That's a late approach. I should maintain pluralism about. As David Lewis said, it is the exotic and the unusual that attracts me and attracts everybody, I hope. So I thought, let's see whether, forget about everything, there can be even one thing which is, as you said, problem without a question. That's where my challenge is. That could there be samasya, question, dikkat, difficulty, which is not problem or question for any consciousness. That is, if no life is there on earth, the earth has just splintered out of the big ball which is the sun, and it is just cooling down. At that time, according to modern science, not according to Pope, but according to modern science, there is no consciousness on earth. It might be like the moon. Not according to Abhinavgupta, because according to Abhinavgupta, Kan Kan mein, in every Paramanu there is consciousness. Chaitanya. And I feel attracted to that view. But I wouldn't say that like an idealist, that it is my consciousness that I am imposing on it. So, in order to find objective problems, objective questions, I wanted to go them as much as I can go the maximum length to discover the possibility of questions, problems, which are not problems for anyone. And that's the hardest thing to swallow, in my view. In the actual paper, the half paper that I sent you, I kind of concede that maybe I'll have to take a panpsychistic view. In which case, of course, the consciousness that will face the problems or even make the problem will not be consciousness recognizably like our consciousness. It will not be intentional, what is called access consciousness. It may be just equally a kind of, phenomenal consciousness. And maybe but then can it have intentionality? Just phenomenal consciousness. Because whenever you say it's a question, kasya chetanasya krite iyam samasya. This is his question. कि चेतनेन विना अपौरुषेयम चेतना इंडिपेंडेंट कोई समस्या हो सकता है क्या? And I just tried to say yes because it is very hard to defend. वो इतना कठिन option है. So I said, let me see how much I can defend it. But I think I'll have to admit that everything is not a question. There are questions. I would still like to push for it. That there are questions which are objectively there. Questions even for the all-knowing God. Right? And that, the only support of that I get is in this Purusha Sukta. When you say everything past, present and future, that's the world. But Ishwara's consciousness or Purusha's consciousness, I would not call it Ishwara, I would not call it God. I would call it, because I am a theist person, almost from the Ramanuja Sampradaya, that it is that Yasmat Ksharamatitom Aksharadapi Chottam Atosmi Loke Vede Pratita Purushottam. That Purushottam of consciousness is beyond all totality and it is creative. So as a Kavi Manishi Parivosvayambu, it is not, does not know what he will do next. We don't have to say it is a closed book. It is an open book. Because, and here I come from the Gita to one of the Gita's best commentators, Abhinavgupta, who says, Murmura Vishrantam Trilokyam Kalpanashate. Shiva is creating with millions of worlds, some of them parallel worlds simultaneously of different kinds. And not that we cannot talk about it, not that we have to be silent about it, but we cannot exhaust talking about it. Now, so the perspectival point, I'm not as eager to give up, but I have performed one sacrifice of my conviction. I give up my conviction that everything that exists in the world can be reduced to question. I don't think that's right. Okay. Now, Mahanandaji's question, Jijnasite Erte, that is the view of Nitya Nyaya. I actually had the full text with me of that part, Kim Padasya Artha. And I mentioned that after Kim, Shuktivada discusses Kati. Okay, Sankhya, Avachinna. But it is really technical. And there also the problem is, Yadi Jijivasu Karchit Nasya, if somebody who is asking the question is not there, then Jijivasita Artha will not be there. But how do you combine that with yam visishti kuta adapu? If you take this as an aporushaya question, जिज्ञासा नाम ज्ञातु इच्छा इच्छा तो केवल नैयायिकम आत्मनि वर्तते परंतु अपौरुषेय प्रश्नस्य यत् वाच्यार्थं शक्ति तो जिज्ञासा अर्थः भवितुं शक्नोति. There's a difference between the Mimamsaka and the Naiyayikas, like in every matter. But it is useful when we do a full philosophy of questions, then we should discuss Ganadhara's view. We should discuss Vimasha's view, where he says Ishwarastikti Chandraveti Pramanam. He says this question, Vetim can mean Utsa, it can mean Nisheda, it can mean Tarka, or it can mean Krishna. And he really cuts from like now. That brings me to Jayanti Devi's question. Very, very interesting and critical. Some questions are not very person to whom it is asked. So they are target specific. The answer specific. At the end, okay, in the Rigveda, okay, when, of course, in Vedanta it says, Sadguru Meva Vigachanti Toshila Jalarashi Vigo Bharatani. But sometimes you have so much, like when the Buddha is asking, how will this suffering stop? He is not asking to somebody. And this happened in a poetic context. And all such Srimad Bhagavatam poetic contexts are philosophical contexts. And I disagree that all philosophical contexts in India are spiritual. I also disagree that all spiritual contexts are philosophical. But I did want to talk today about the spiritual significance, and I will come to that. Many people ask me. But one example of questions which are not addressed to anyone. And they are not saying, oh, it is a fact that I am a gopi, and in the middle of the Rasa Krida, Krishna has disappeared. So I am just telling you, I at present am ignorant as to where Krishna is. That is not what is being said. When the gopis are crying, Kaun gali gaye Shyam? They are asking birds, inappropriate people. Birds cannot talk. They are asking stones in the Gopi Gita. Huh? They are saying, show us where you are. Because this is question coming from their existence. They are asking for something. Where have you gone? They are saying, Surata Bandhanam, Shokanashanam, Swarita Veduna, Sushtu Chumbitam, Vitara Raga Vismaram, Vitara Kogata. Where have you gone? They are not asking Krishna. Krishna is not in. But they are asking the world. This is without interpretation. Okay. And then comes the question from Kanika or Patanjali, which I addressed a little bit. Spirituality, Vikambara Pratya. Lots of questions Kanika has asked. Some of them are relevant to the talk, some of them are not so much. But the main question that I will take respectfully, because it was repeated by you also, that how is this spiritual? Why didn't we say worldly significance, philosophical significance? It is spiritual because Abhinavgupta's Tantra Loka is top to bottom a spiritual text. it is a practical text also for sadhana. And it engages with all philosophical schools, and it addresses a question that where the options are given, Sthanurva Purushova, is that the mukhya form of samshaya? He says no. Jayarata's commentary is interesting. Sthanurva Purusho Veti na mukhya asti samshaya. So, the meaning of Kim is deeper than the Nayayika Samshaya category. It is closer to the Vaisheshika. I don't know whether the Vaisheshika specialist, Victoria Lysenko, is still there. She is specific. Okay? Even Shashi Prabhaji would know in detail. There is something called Anantyavasaya in Vaisheshika, where options are not given. You see something, you don't say, is it this or that? If you say this or that, you have already narrowed down. You have a little knowledge. You are not asking Kimeta. Anantyavasaya is Kimeta. This is Manasa. But if you want to express Manasa Samshaya in the form of Anantyavasaya, then you don't say Ayam Vastu, which is already known, then two predicates, two dharmas, two prakaras. Etad dharmavan nava. There you are specifying dharma. But Anantyavasaya, you just say Kimeta. And people try to reduce that to Nayayika Samshaya. But Nyayakandalikar and then Sridhara and also Vallabhacharya Leelavatika, they are saying no, Anantyavasaya is a different thing. And similarly, Abhinavgupta says, Sarvesham eva dharmanam anudghatita rupatvam is the form of Kim. No dharma should be mentioned. Nirvikalpaka samshaya. And one thing I did not tell you, which is more interesting for all of you. After doing this, like you said, somebody said here, Godavarishji said, Trishula. What is the Trishula? It is not just Shiva's Trishula. He thinks, and here he is indebted to Gautam, but he is using it going beyond Gautam. He is saying, even in perception, pratyaksha, Nirvikalpaka is Uddesha, Prathama Savikalpaka Gyan is Lakshana, and then more Savikalpaka in answer to question is Pariksha. In Anuviti, Paksha Nirdesha is Uddesha, Vyapti and Paramarsha is Lakshana, and answering the question of the opponents by showing that it is a Sadhetu, Pramanya Pariksha, that is Pariksha. And he says these three come from the very nature of Samvit, all Samvit. Now what does that got to do with spirituality? Spirituality is defined either in the Bhagavad Gita Mimamsa way, or in the Yoga Sutta way, or in the spiritual way. The Mimamsa way is Yajna. Yajna is not just ritual. Because the first yajna mentioned in Kaushitaki Upanishad was Antaryaga, where you give ahuti of vak in prana or give ahuti of prana in vak. And this happens during mental questioning, Guru Shishya Samvad. And that question answer is a judgment, is not my claim. It is called Swadhyaya Jnana Jajna in the Gita. Abhinavgupta in Dravya Yajna, Tapo Yajna, Jnana Yajna, in that verse, Swadhyaya Jnana Jajna, he explains explicitly as Prashnottara Jajna. Why? Because everybody is doing Dravya Tyaga. What is the Dravya that they are giving up? Dravya Tyaga is the definition of all judgment. All sacrifice is giving up of something dear to you. Your claim, I understand everything, is very dear to you. When you give that up and you say, I don't know, then as a questioner, you are performing a duty. And this is the spirituality in the sense of sacrifice. But there is another spirituality, which is when consciousness looks at consciousness itself. When these paranchikani vedrina swayambhu, then what happens? Avritta chakshu. When you become avritta chakshu, in as Kathopanishad, that's the second kind of spiritual. And discovering, you suppose there is no guru in front of you. You ask a question. Who to ask it? You don't go to Google. You don't go to Guru. You don't go to Pope. You don't go to Baba Ramdev also. You keep asking the question yourself. This Prashna Chaitanya investigates itself. It becomes Swasamritti. And then Abhinavgupta in these 28 verses, he said, in every Prashna, the seed of an answer is contained. In simple words for philosophy professors, I would call it epistemological Satkaryavada. Just as material Satkaryavada is that the pot and this porcelain, the clay pot, was contained in the clay. That the plume of the peacock was contained in the end yoke of the peacock. This is material Satkaryavada. Similarly, in all our cognitions, investigative cognitions are the seed for all the answers. This is Abhinavgupta's view. And thirdly, the tantric sense of spirituality is explained best in this 1,000-year-old text called Tantraloka. And in the Pratamanika of that, he says that the main thing to understand is, as somebody said here, that no guru, no nothing. You have a Shiva Shakti in yourself because of Prakasha Vimarsha. And if you investigate yourself, then you will find that question and answer are coming from the same source. Except that instead of taking a Nirvikara, Nirguna form, it is taking the form of Ardhanarishwara. Half question, half answer. And that is why it is a dancing Brahman that can answer all questions. The first part of the question, Nataraja posture is done. If you ask a Bharatanatyam person who has already passed her Arangetram, they will tell you. There is Bhujanga Trasita, which is a chari, a particular leg posture. By seeing a snake, you raise your leg. Without Bhujanga Trasita, you cannot do Nataraja posture. You are taught. First Bhujanga Trasita. Shiva himself does that. But then there is Sthiti with the other. So, Prashna and Uttama is there in Shiva's body itself. That's why Karpurika Chandana Lepanai, Masana Vasmanga Viloka Milepanai, Satkundalai, Animundalai, Namah Shivaya to Namah Shivaya. This verse I did not learn from the book.
Thank you very much. I think Professor P.K. Mukhopadhyay is there online. He is there. If he is willing to give some words, I will invite Professor Mukhopadhyay. He left, I think.
I think only his name is left.
No. Okay. Professor Haramohan Mishra, are you willing to say something? A few words?
Yeah. He will speak something. Yeah.
Just few words because
You are not audible.
Unmute.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are
Just
audible.
just few words, because I have met once Professor Arindam
You
Chakrabarti,
are not
and I
audible,
am
sir.
full of appreciation. I am full of appreciation for him. And in Shanti, we have met in the room of Godavari Mishra, and we
Sorry,
have discussed many things. And his personal life also he has discussed with me.
you are not
And I
audible,
know
sir.
that he.
Hari Mohan
Am I
Mishra.
not audible? Am I not audible? Am I not audible now?
Yeah, you are
Hello?
audible.
Okay. So I am full of appreciation for him. That is why just I would like to speak some few words. So you see, many things he has discussed, because he is such a scholar. He knows so many things and speaks on so many things. So it is not time to go to so many things. But one thing I would like to just quote from some brief slokas from Tantra Loka Fast Adnika that he has referred to. He has referred to this sloka Tathanudghatita Kara Bhava Prasara Vartmana. Also, he has referred to this Thanurba Purusho Beti Na Mukhya, etc. But one thing I should just make some observation, and just to bring it to the conclusion, that generally, if you go to the question answer matrix, whether it is in Tantra or in any philosophical system, or in general the question answer, then everywhere we find the question is prompted by ignorance. Somebody who doesn't know puts the question. And also there is difference between the answerer and the questioner. The questioner is a different person and the answerer is a different person. It is not there in the Tantra, according to Abhinavgupta. Because here the question, the Devi herself is the question. As it is, the sloka is quoted from Paratrinchika Vivarana by Professor Godavari Mishra. Etau prasara sanhara bakala kalitau yatah tadeka rupa mevedam tattvam prasnuttaratmakam. This tattva, what is known as question and answer combined together, it is only one, as it has been remarked by Professor Chakrabarti at the end, that consciousness itself is Shiva and Shakti, and every consciousness is Shiva and Shakti, and the question is always raised in consciousness, and always it is resolved in consciousness. So question and answer become one in that level. And there is, I just quote from Tantra Loka, and from that portion which Professor Chakrabarti has referred to, this slokas I quote: "Etat prasnottaraत्मत्वे पारमेश्वर शासने पर संबंध रूपत्वम अभिसंबंध पंचके यथोक्तम रत्नमालायाम सर्पः परकरात्मकः महान अवान्तरो दिव्यः मिश्रः अन्योन्यस्तु पंचमः भिन्नयोः प्रस्तुतद्वक्त्रोः चैकात्मं यत्सौच्यते संबंधः परता तस्य पूर्णैकात्म्य प्रथामयि." When there is difference between the prastru and the vaktru, the questioner and the answerer, that question is prompted by ignorance. And when there is oneness, identity between the prastru and the vaktru, here in Tantras, there is no ignorance. The question is prompted by anugraha, because Devi herself is anugraha. Always in the Tantra, we see Sri Devi Uvata, Sri Bhairava Uvata. So what Devi? Devi and Bhairava is the same. The same principle has become question and answer. Devi is the question and Bhairava is the answer. And here Abhinav says, Bhinnayoho prastutad bhaktroho chaikatmam jat sautyate sambandha parata. So he has discussed so many sambandhas, because between the questioner and the answer, all the question and the answer, he has discussed 6 sambandhas are there, like parasambandha. Abhinav has discussed, and he has referred to one extreme, one tantra that is not available now, that is Pura Ratnamala, and he says that Jathoktam Ratnamalayam, because he referred to, Abhinava has referred to Ratnamala, Pura Ratnamala. He said that in Pura Ratnamala, 6 type of relations between questioner and answerer are given, and here, and these sambandhas are parasambandha, mahan sambandha, antarala sambandha, divya sambandha, divya sambandha, and adivya sambandha. Adibya Sambandha comes to our empirical level, when in our level we question something and get the answer from somebody else. But at the tantric, the highest wisdom, that is the Parasambandha, he says, Bhinnayoho prastutad bhaktroho chaikatmam jat. When it becomes oikatma, oneness between prastru and bhaktru, then it is known as Parasambandha. And here only the highest knowledge, devoid of all types of ignorance, reveals. And it is Purna Oikatma Prathamai. It is Purna Jnana, Purna Pratha, and it is Oikatma Pratha. So these are the things which are very difficult things, and these are to be discussed afterwards. And I with Professor Godavari Mishra, we have just taken up one paper, that is the question answer matrix. And so we also would like to get help from such great scholars like Professor Arindam Chakrabarti. And I am very thankful to hear him. And also I am very thankful because ICPR has given a project which I am translating, that Paratrintika Vivarana. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I want to say that Professor Mishra's comments were the most, I went to the heart of the matter, and I had planned to discuss those 6 relations, and thank you for mentioning them. But you mentioned another concept of sambandha. That is where it is very hard for Nayayikas, Advaita Vedantins, Yoga Sutras, Sankhya. Nobody understands Abhinava's stand because he is a strict Advaitavadi, but he believes in the reality of sambandha. And he defines it as Eka Neka Swarupa. Now you say, oh, he's a Advaitavadi. No. He has a very peculiar, and you say, oh, then sambandha is in the Vyavarika realm, and the actual ultimate reality, there is no sambandha. No, he thinks there is ultimate reality, there is sambandha. That is, there is some kind of duality you create, Shiva creates within himself just to enjoy. So Dvitiya Maicha. So Ekaki Navai Raivare Reme. This Dvitiya is not Dvitiya, it is his own. And in everything, starting from purchase market relation, he gives example, Kraya Vikrayadi. From that relation to the relation between Pratyabhijna, I am Shiva. Where, in Pratyabhijna, if you ask, Soyam Devadatta, Vedo Asti Nama. Now, Avachedakasya Vedo Asti. Sa, iti ego Avachedaka. Ayam, iti aparu Avachedaka. But Avachedaka Vede Satyapi, in recognition, it is not A equal to A, it is A equal to B. Okay? This, suppose if I have seen him in childhood, suppose. This is the Kranti I saw, in St. Stephen's College as a student. Is it the same? Is the two the same? Yes, they're identical. But there is Veda also. And this Veda Saishno Veda, he thinks Sambandhamai is Samvit. Samvit is all about Sambandha. That's why it is not an ordinary Advaitavada, Nirvishesha Chaitanya. It has these Sambandha. Just as in Ramanuja Sampradaya. Shesha Sheshi Sambandha is fundamental. Paramarthika. Mukti, even after moksha, even if you have Nirvikalpa Samadhi, you will have Shesha Sheshi Sambandha. Does that mean that they are not a Vishishta Advaitins or also Advaitins? Yeah, Vishishta Advaitins. So he was very, very accurate. And that's why it is spiritual, as well as logical, as well as metaphysical. Which does not mean that everything that we do in Indian philosophy, okay, for example, Vyadikarana Dharma Chinna Pratiyogita Ka Bhava Sikriyate Nava, because it's Indian philosophy, therefore it's spirituality. That's wrong. That's not good. Not true.
Thank you very much. So without going into any details, because we are running out of time, I would like to say a few words. Thereafter, conclude this session. This was indeed a very nice presentation by Professor Abhinavgupta ji on what mean Abhinavgupta on the spiritual significance of questions. And actually, the presentation not only cleared so many things, but raised so many questions also. And for the Nayayikas, because the question he raised, that is very, very important for the Nayayikas. Iyam visrishti to the avakuva. So the Nayayikas say that the God is actually author of Vedas, speaker of Vedas. So how this kind of question could arise there? So this is the question to the Nayayikas to answer and to think over. How is it possible? Secondly, he took so many issues. The difference between Sanshaya and Prashna. What is the Sanshaya and what is the difference, and what is how to differentiate the doubt from the question. This was a very important question asked by Mahanand Jhaji also. As I think, question and doubt, Sanshaya, according to the Nayayikas, is a cognition. But question is not a cognition. This is an act. Yes. So between them, we can make a very clear distinction. So you can see that Sanshaya is actually cause of question. Because there is Sanshaya, therefore you are asking the questions. And all the questions which are asked, they raise so many other questions. And they also ask for answers. So questioning as defined, it is actually essence of philosophy, we all know. And in Indian philosophy also, it is very important. As Professor Chakravarti has rightly pointed out, Koham, this is the question. And it is coming in Vedas. And also there is another sentence very much similar to Soham, Koham and Soham. So in that way, we can see that there is a question and there is another answer. And also, there is a very long process to realize the fact, the point. And after that, one realizes Aham Brahmasmi. So actually, this Aham Brahmasmi is actually the answer to all the questions. And when it is said, Gurustu Monam Vyakhyanam Shishyastu Chinna Sanshaya, the same point is raised there. Professor Chakravarti has written a very beautiful paper on Mauna. Actually, I should say, whatever he has written, almost 100 papers, so many books, with so much depth, and actually, he is not actually writing to convey something, but actually to inquire something. Whenever he is writing, whenever he is writing a paper, research paper, many times, many research papers are written to refute that. There was a very brilliant paper written by him against the immaculate perception. I think every Nayayika should read that paper. In that paper, he is refuting Nirvikalpa perception. And Stephen H. Phillips, Monica, and so many persons have written to refute that position, but his standpoint is still unrefuted. Because as he presented the position, because whenever he is raising some questions, he is raising very important and very, very wise questions. Because he is not only reading the text, but making a dialogue with the text. So when you make a dialogue with the text, in that case, actually, in Pashpashandik in Hashya. There is a shlok, I don't remember that sometimes it is not opening up. Jaiva Ushati Shvasa. So that is actually, the text are there in that way. And if we make a dialogue, if we try to do it, try to understand it. And secondly, this spiritual significance of question is this one also, that in the realm of religion, many times it is said that Christian is not correct. But here, when we study, when we look into our tradition, it is there that questioning is always there, because in Gita, he quoted, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprasnena srivaya upadikshyanti te jnanam jnaninastatvadarshina. So, pariprashna is very much important. Pariprashna is very actually the term is also very important. Paritaha prashnaha pariprashna. All around. The questioning is from all the sides, not only one side, not only other side, but questioning is from all the sides. So when you are asking the questions from all the sides, the real.
That's why the Bengal Student Union got the idea of Kirao. That you encircle the person, keep him asking questions until he has to be hospitalized.
So that is the way to ask the question from all the sides. So this is the job of philosophers, to question and also to find out the answers. So this is done here. I think because 1 month ago I talked with Professor Abhinavgupta Chakrabarti, and when I asked, he agreed to deliver the lecture. Professor Navjim Rastogi had to come to join this lecture program, but he couldn't due to his illness and his wife's illness. Otherwise, the program would have been a better one. Almost 20 persons in the morning today texted me that they are unable to join due to some points, some other points. There is another seminar is going on in Bhimrao Ambedkar University, and Professor Balram Shukla is there engaged. He was going to present his paper today. So some other persons also could not join. Malal Miri could not come. But as I think, there is a very famous sukti, Shreyansi Bahu Bhignani. So whenever you are doing something, there are so many difficulties, and we have to fight those difficulties. But I think this program was successful, very beautiful. I would like to thank you, sir, for being here, by accepting my proposal and presenting your thoughts to enlighten us, and also to make us question some more questions, because that makes our shastras grow, and that we had been doing in our text, in our tradition. So I would like to thank Professor Kranti Saranji, because he accepted our invitation to be here and came from Ashoka University. Professor Ramnath Jhaji, Professor Mahanand Jhaji, Professor Vishnupad Mahapatraji, Professor K. Anantji, Professor Jayanti Sahuji, and here also Subhashini Varikji, Professor Ajay Vermaji, Rahul, Professor Ritu Jaiswalji, and some other scholars, Professor Aditya Gupta ji, and some other scholars who are there from different colleges, different universities. I am thankful all of you, and I think this ICPR office here, we have, this is an office, but also I think we should start some academic events. Therefore, this program was organized here. I think if I had organized it in IIC, that would have been a little bit better, but the purpose wouldn't have been solved. Therefore, fulfilled. Because I want to revitalize this building also, this space also here. Earlier, many programs had been organized, and I think we should start organizing such programs here. And I thought that this is the best opportunity we can have. Therefore, if something is wrong, if something I could not fulfill, if something there is missing, please forgive me, and I hope in future that those things which I could not complete now, I will complete in future. Thanking you all. I invite all of you for lunch. Thank
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank
Sir.
you. And from many countries, from many states. Thank you all of you.
बहुत ही अच्छा लेक्चर था सर, बहुत दिन बाद सुना इसको. थैंक यू सर.